Hey, this is Ryan Estis, and I'm so excited that you are listening to Awaken Nation with Brad Solis, where we're going to talk about how to prepare for impact.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Solis, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people just like you and me from all over who are doing amazing things. Welcome to Awakened Nation.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I got a friend of Awaken Nation here on today, Ryan Estis. Uh, he is mind-blowingly good on stage. He's one of what did they say? Presentation Magazine said you're one of the best keynote speakers ever heard, Ryan. And I have to say, I agree. I concur with that.
Well, thank you. It's great to be back, second time on the big show. So we must have had a good first conversation, but couldn't wait. I was excited to jam. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think we went a little deep on the last one. I remember you talking about some of your journeys in life,
Yeah.
and I want to touch base with this today. You know, it was like you took a break during COVID and the lockdowns and all that, and then you came back with like, bam, your new website, your new message, your new videos. Let's talk about that because it's sort of like you were resting up, and now here's your big piece, your coup de grace that just came out of nowhere.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, COVID was it was a combination of, I think, reflection and transition, right? So, 2019 was a big year for me. We did 84, 85 events, something like that, and I was on the road constantly, and I was on the treadmill at 12. I was going really hard and it was going well, and we got pushed off and then everything stopped, and I had a chance for the first time in a long time really to just take some space and time and reflect on the business and my life, and if I wanted to keep doing it the way I was doing it. And I decided I didn't. I mean, I was pretty intent on making some changes. And so I did. And yeah, in short order, we launched a new company and finished a book and decided that, what I wanted to say going forward was changing. And so the rebranding and ultimately culminating in the launch the new website with a lot of new content and features. So we're really excited about it and to finally have it all out into the world.
Fantastic. For those of you listening at home, this is Ryan Estis. He is a hyper growth entrepreneur, best-selling author, and sales and leadership keynote speaker. One of the best speakers you could ever book for your event. And his new book, which I love, we got to talk about this. Your new book you co-authored with your brother Chad called Prepare for Impact. And it's a playbook for sales growth and human-centered leadership for the new economy. But I wanted to go into this because I always find in every book I've ever read or picked up, the meat is in the tagline or the subline. And yours is driving growth and serving others through the principles of human-centered leadership. And immediately in the description, it says, it's your playbook that the Estes brothers used to succeed. And you have 30 simple steps to achieve ambitious sales goals. Let's talk about that. How did you
Sure.
discover these 30 simple steps and which ones are the most important?
Yeah, the discovery part is pretty interesting actually. So I wrote the book with my brother Chad. I'm a couple of years older. And when I started my career, I knew I was going to go into sales and did. And I took to it right away. The first year or two was a little bumpy, but I got on the right track and really immersed myself in it and just was a student of professional selling, listened to everything I could listen to, read everything I could read, constantly working on my game. Well, meanwhile, my brother graduates and takes his first entry level sales job. And so I was excited that he was going into the profession. Also, I thought it was just a great way to make a living. So I encouraged him and was supportive. And time went on, and I get a phone call from him, and he said, I'm struggling. I need help. And he said, this job selling, he said, I don't know if it's for me. He was having a hard time. And So I said, look, I can help you. I know what to do. And uh, I took some time. I took a long weekend, and I just thought through everything I had learned. And I was having success, but what I never did was codify why. And so I really thought about what changed for me. How do I approach it differently? What's important? What do I think I need to do more of and better? And based on everything I'd learned and studied, practiced, and actually reverse engineering my own approach, I came up with these 30 steps. I sent it to Chad. And that was the original intention of the 30 steps. It wasn't for commercial purposes. I wasn't going to share it with anybody else. I was trying to help my brother. Well, he took the 30 steps, absorbed the ideas, and then started to have his own success. And then something I never expected happened. Chad got promoted into management and started to use the 30 steps. They became his culture document, his playbook. He started to
Wow.
train around them, as he jokingly says, and never gave me appropriate credit. But I just never, in my mind, I never saw them being used that way. And it became somewhat of a cult document in his industry. He works in professional sports, always has. He runs the business of the Dallas Cowboys now. But people that worked for him took the document. They went to other teams, and the Atlanta Falcons were using them, and hockey teams were using them, and it just became this sort of underground movement. And up till the point, and we start the book this way, he's working on a project with the Atlanta Falcons. He gets to Atlanta, he goes into their corporate headquarters, and the 30 steps are painted on the wall of the Atlanta Falcons corporate headquarters. And he texts me a picture. And I just, that's one of those moments where you think, what in the hell is going on here? And lo and behold, we had some back and forth, and not too long after that, we were in a restaurant together, and we're having a few drinks, and Chad said, isn't that amazing that these teams are taking it and using it? And I said, yeah, and you never gave me credit. He said, well, you should have written a book. And I said, but you can't steal my guy. We were going back and forth, just having fun as brothers do. And by our third drink, he's like, you really should have written that book. I said, well, maybe we should write it together. And he said, let's
Wow.
do it. And that was the genesis. But we decided, you read the subtitle, we decided, hey, the 30 steps are a great foundation. They got us to a certain place, but there's this whole other, area that we had to move into, which was management and leadership. And so let's spend some real time thinking through, hey, what does it take to be a great leader today, particularly coming out of the pandemic as the world is changing so fast. The 30 steps were a great springboard. They're universal ideas, but let's really go down. And so that was the thesis of human-centered leadership. And so it's our sales career is the first half of the book and what it takes to be great. We both succeeded, got promoted into management, and had to figure that out. But it's even changing again now. And so that became the genesis of the book. And I'm really proud of it. I think the ideas are great. We're getting great feedback. And it's been a lot of fun to have it out in the world.
It's an incredible read, and I recommend everybody pick it up. But I'm laughing as you're telling the story. I feel like you guys are the Jerry Maguire movie come to light. We're sitting there. You complete me, and I just think I think some of the greatest ideas and curriculums and standards came out of these kind of happy accidents where your brother reaches out to you and says, "Hey, I'm failing here. Help me out." And it grew kind of like a mind of its own. And I take my hat off to you guys for that. Kudos.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to work on. It's been fun to have it out in the world and see the reaction. And yeah, I'm real proud that we got to do a project together. It's been great.
I love that. What would you say are the best principles in those steps that you tell sales pros or managers or leaders to follow? What do you think are the number three, those three top things that everybody should do?
So the first thing, it's one that we emphasize pretty heavily on both sides of the equation, is it's education. It's you could say the principle's education, but it's self-education or invest in you. Like the learning never stops, and I think that's more true today. I think it's just so critical, both for sellers and leaders, to constantly be iterating, reskilling, expanding, learning, growing, and getting better. Uh, Particularly now, I mean, the world's changing so fast that if you don't embed that kind of learning agility into the context of your own work and your business, you're likely to get disrupted or passed by. And so I think that's a real critical issue. And I think second to that, and this actually, we talk about this more in the context of leadership, than we really do about selling. But I think it's important in both sides. These are disciplines that it's not about you. It's about having the humility to understand your job is about helping somebody else get what they want. And one of the principles of human-centered leadership is invest in their development. And when you're a leader that pours into people, you take the time to really know someone, see someone, make them feel valued, understood, and you are really an advocate in investing and helping them become more of who they're capable of being, funny things starts to happen. They stretch, they improve, they contribute more, and actually they're more loyal. And the
Yeah.
best boss I ever worked for, he helped me see my potential differently. He expanded my perspective around what was possible for me. He let me borrow his belief in me until mine caught up.
Yeah.
And I think it was such a beautiful gift to work for somebody who poured that much energy into me, but also had confidence in me, held me accountable, challenged me to grow. And without him, I don't think the book would exist or you and I would be talking today. So you realize that the impact, and prepare for impact, it's not an accident, because it is about having impact on other people. And the last thing I'll share is just the awareness that we talk a lot about this in the book, just this idea of relationships. And it's one of the principles, it's one of the 30 steps about how to build these value-based relationships. And I think one of the things that makes the book unique, it's a
Mhm.
principle too, like, and I think it is true. The quality of your life is in many respects determined by the quality of your relationships. I mean, when we first jumped on the Zoom today, we hadn't talked for a while. What was the first thing we talked about? Relationships.
Yeah.
Like, it's because they so deeply shape how we experience our lives. And so when you understand that, and you put that into the proper perspective, and you have the humility and the self-awareness, and you invest the time and the presence to really cultivate these relationships. And I think one of the things that I really love about the book is, yes, it's a business book. We're talking about 30 steps and 9 tactics and sales and leadership, but the consistent thread through the book is that it's about a relationship.
Mm.
And so much of our meaning and fulfillment in life, I think, comes out of the impact we have on other people. And so this idea of connecting in service and being a human-centered leader, or putting the customer at the center of everything you do, I think that's a thesis, and just something that everybody could take, no matter what they're doing. And I think if they applied some of that thinking and those ideas, they would be rewarded for it.
Powerful. I think a lot of young employees, workers, people managers, and young leaders today, uh, they really aren't sure where they stand within an organization sometimes. And you just kind of said that one boss that made you believe in yourself. What was his name, by the way? Because I love a
John,
good
yeah,
humble.
his name was John Stepien, and he's a life mentor. I mean, we haven't worked together in years, but we're still in touch today. He lives in Denver, actually. So if I go to Denver, we'll reach out. Well, and that's the thing about great leaders, is that they invest in you as a whole person. It's not just about this period of time or the performance. When we unpack that in the book, I mean, one of Chad's things is he has this whole family tree, right? All these people that work for him and went and spread out in the industry and went and became managers and leaders. And now the impact becomes exponential. And so it is true that great leaders develop other leaders. And
Yeah.
it's okay if you're developing somebody, if you develop them up and out of the organization. And sometimes managers like to protect people or hold them back if they're, even if they're performing well, or especially if they're performing well, because you don't want to lose that talent for
Yeah.
yourself. But that's not leadership. And so we offer some real good, I think, thinking around that in the book. But to your point about young people, one of the pieces of advice that I give to young professionals is when they're considering a job is to hire your boss. And to your point, that the impact that one person had on me and what the potential that a great leader or mentor could have on you, on your career, on your relationships, on your perspective, on your thinking. And so be really,
Yeah.
really, you want a great job, you want to get paid, all these things, you want to work for a cool company. Your experience at work is really going to be affected by who you report to. And I would just, that's something I don't think people think about enough. And hire your boss is, I think, good advice for any young person.
I love what you said. The boss that had the biggest impact on me was Glenn Nicholson. And I was a young graphic designer who was hired at Vogart Crafts back in the early 80s or mid 80s. And he would call me into his office and ask my opinion on the latest design, for the package. And I do the market research and he would just listen to me. And, when you're in your 20s, especially back then, I'm a baby boomer. No one listened to you. Okay. They were never listening to your wisdom points on how life should be. And yet he did. And even after I left the company and he left as well, we stayed in touch and I did some work for him as well. And then we lost touch a little bit. And the most amazing thing happened, Ryan. I was at a mall in Long Island and he walks right in front of my car. And I had a copy of Liquid Leadership, my very first book, and I signed it for him and we stayed in touch. And he is a phenomenal mentor. And for those of you who are listening and you are young and you really want to make headway in your career, do what Ryan said, hire your boss. Look around you. Some of you may have two or three bosses you answer to, different departments. Pick the one that has that energy, that energy that they are clearly someone who really strives for the next level. And I like what you said, Ryan, about always consistently be getting better, trying to learn, have that as an impact, because the people who work with you are going to be walking by your desk and they're going to see you with a copy of Ryan's and Chad's book and they're going to go, what are you reading now? What you fill your mind with is incredibly important. So thank you. Thank you for all that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Those are some of my favorite ideas and in the book. And yeah, I mean, I think those stories so interesting. Your share about your leader. What you said. He listened to me, and you found
Yeah.
that to be so rare. And no, listening is the gateway to empathy, and it's really a catalyst for meaningful human connection. And if you're a leader and you really understand, how to hold space and make somebody feel seen and heard and known, those are they're soft skills. They may be considered soft skills, but I think, empathy and meaningful connection, they're some of the most important things we could do in relationship. And by the way,
Yeah.
that's leading a business, leading a community, leading a church, leading an institution, because they form a foundation of trust and safety. And when
Yeah.
people trust you and they feel safe in your presence, and that you're going to honor them, and that becomes fuel for us to grow and us to take risks and us to become and us to be more of who we're capable of being. And my leader did that for me. And so interesting you think of someone, and I
Yeah.
guess the invitation for anybody that's leading or managing people and listening to this would be, you and I just shared our best boss story and what they did for us.
Yeah.
Who would put you on their list, and what contribution are you making each and every day? Because that's what leadership's all about.
It is kind of humbling when I'm in the hands, I'm the mentor for someone else. And I have to say this, when I moved to Vegas, a good friend of mine who I went to high school with, her and her husband lived out here, and they had two sons. And her one son, she asked me to mentor him, and I was like, "What am I going to do with this?" Okay. And I'm a big fan of show up and just do it. And we went on hikes, we went to movies. I talked to this young man, and he got his life to this other level. And when he told me he admired me, I'm from a small town, so that didn't sit right with me. I felt really, and even right now I'm getting choked up. It's I guess the lack of a better word was I was blushing. I'm not used to compliments, and so I feel like my mentorship is super important for this young man. And you're right. I want everybody who's listening to make a list of some of the people that impacted your life. But at the same time, who are you impacting? Because it really can make you realize that, it's a George, what was it, In a Wonderful Life? George Bailey? Is that his name?
Yeah, Bailey. Yeah.
Um, you can realize you are making an impact, making a difference. And thank you, Brian, for that. I haven't thought of that at all. I want to talk about, and this is, for those of you who don't know, folks, I met Ryan through Jane Atkinson, who's probably one of the top speaker coaches in the country, if not the world. Well, we have to say she's international because she's up there in Canada.
She is. Right.
But well, I feel blessed that she introduced us. But what really caught, I believe, the nation's attention on you is this story that you tell about the perfect cup of coffee. And I want you, I'm going to just show the video of you telling this and talk about an impactful story that not only blew my mind, but is the central focus a lot of times when it comes to you talking about customer service and sales. So all I'm going to say is roll the tape.
I will never forget that cup of coffee. Well, a couple years ago, I was traveling when my schedule worked out on Christmas Eve. I thought the airport was going to be a zoo, so I got there a couple hours early. It wasn't crowded at all, so for me, that means coffee. So I get down into my Terminal D, and I see the green sign. And when I travel these days, I always wear earbuds, so I'm rocking out to Coldplay. And I see the sign, I get in line, and there's one woman in front of me, and she's having a very animated conversation with the barista. She's kind of waving her arms, and they're both smiling and laughing. So I wasn't in a rush, but out of curiosity, I popped out my earbuds. And sure enough, they're going on about their holidays and their plans and the kids and presents, and she starts to move down the line. So it's my turn to order. And I was greeted with this very warm and sincere welcome. This woman said to me, "Hi, my name's Lily. What's your name?" I said, "I'm Ryan." She said, "Ryan, what can I make for you today?" I said, "Well, I want a grande pumpkin spice latte." She said, "You want whipped cream on that, don't you?" I said, yeah, I want the whipped cream. She said, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do." She said, "I'm going to make it extra hot, load it up with whipped cream, sprinkle a little nutmeg on top. That's how I like it. You're going to love it." I said, "Sounds great." She said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Cleveland." She said, "Are you going back to Cleveland to spend the holiday with your family?" I said, "Yes." Now, at this point, I start looking around for the camera, right? I'm trying to get a latte. So I move down the line, and the conversation continues, and she's funny. She's asking me questions about my family and our holiday traditions. She's laughing, and I'm laughing. And she hands me my drink and says to me, "Ryan, Have a safe trip back to Cleveland. Go create some extraordinary memories with your family. When you come back through the Minneapolis airport, I want you to stop here and tell me all about it. Because I get my drink, I start walking away, and I stop and I look back at this woman, and I think to myself, you know, it's Christmas Eve. Most people would rather be anywhere else in the world than serving coffee in an airport. Not her. It was like she was meant to be there. And I couldn't help myself. I had to go back. So I did. I walked back and I said, "Excuse me, Lily." And, you know, she jumps around. "Ryan, is everything okay with the latte?" I said, "No." I said, "The latte is perfect." I just had to come back and ask you, what is your secret to making such meaningful connections over serving coffee? Well, she corrected me. She said, "Ryan, I'm not serving coffee." I said, "Okay, what are you doing?" She had thought about this. And what she told me was, "I'm pouring happiness into people's lives." I said, "You're pouring what?" Like, what is pouring happiness? And her definition of pouring happiness, she wants to be happy in her life. She wants to be around happy people. She cares about her customers. She wants them to come back. So she chooses, even on Christmas Eve, to smile, to have fun, to help people, to just be happy. Instead of just focusing on how to be successful, focus on how to be helpful. The other thing she understands and masters straight away is the very specific and intentional decision around how she chooses to show up, even on Christmas Eve. You know this. A lot of things happen in work and in our lives that are beyond our sphere of influence or control. She doesn't control the weather in Minneapolis. Trust me, I live there. All she gets to own is how she chooses to respond to those things. Decide how you show up. You know, it's interesting, when I met Lily, and she would have had no way of knowing this, but I was pretty heavy in the heart and had a lot on my mind. My parents, both retired school teachers, married 45 years. About 3 months before that holiday, I got a call from Mom. We got some really tough medical news about Dad. It was a terminal diagnosis, and we knew we probably weren't going to have a lot of time. So I was sitting in that airport on Christmas Eve, not in the best place in the world. I will never forget that cup of coffee. When you decide to show up consistently as the best version of who you are, it gives you your best opportunity to meet people where they are. And you never know when someone needs you to be your best.
You know, that story blows my mind. It really did, because it was the perfect elixir you needed at that moment. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that story just took off on its own, and you actually honored her by having her fly out to one of your keynotes? Am I correct?
That's right. Yeah. So a couple of thoughts, you know, even a precursor to how it impacted my life. I think it's just important to share that, you know, I'm very privileged in my life that I get to be a storyteller. You know, that companies, you know, give me this opportunity or this platform to share my ideas in service of trying to help their people, you know, grow a business, impact customers, build a winning team, you know, whatever the case is. And, you know, the impact that Lily had on me in that moment, just, it was profound. And I was obviously going through a difficult time. And so I was probably, my receptors were up, or I was maybe more aware or receptive to the resonance of that exchange. But I've always said this, you know, this story has nothing to do with me. You know, it's my privilege. And I think in some respects, my opportunity to shine a light on her and the impact that she has, and in turning these transactions into these meaningful exchanges, and her mindset around that. And there's just so much we could learn, you know, from somebody like that in terms of presence and how we show up for others and the choices that we make and how each moment counts. And, as a speaker, one of the things I recognize is, much like Lily, oftentimes I'm in a room with people and I'm going to be there for an hour, and it's the one time we're going to cross paths in our lifetime. And how do I want to show up for that moment and serve? And what kind of impact do I want to create in this one experience, this one exchange that we get to have? And, Lily was a gift for me because the experience I had really, it shaped some of my own perspective specific to how I want to show up. And yeah, look, I mean, the story, it's a beautiful story because she's a beautiful, bright light. And so the story resonates, and it's, been passed around all over the world. And it's received, I think approaching 100 million views online, and it's been
Wow.
translated into 14 languages. And we probably have 30 different companies that are licensing or leveraging that content in their corporate development or training programs, and Fortune 1000 companies, right? And she's been inducted into the Customer Experience Hall of Fame at Starbucks, and they had a little ceremony for her at the airport, and I got to go and give a talk. And we've maintained this connection and this relationship, and I still see her when I go to the airport, and she still makes a latte for me. And I think she told me at one point she was averaging 20 selfies a week because of the story. People come up and say, "You're Lily." And it's become a whole thing. So, I'm a business guy, right? I'm not a famous person. I help run businesses, and I write about business and work. But that's the story that sort of transcended a little bit. And so now, yeah, when I go to speak somewhere, people do know, oh, you're the guy that told that story. And it's probably the thing I'm best known for. And that's all a credit to her. It has nothing to do with me.
I find that amazing because I consider myself a master storyteller as well. And I think that, I feel I can always get better. But when I hear you speak on stage, it's just this heads and toes above everybody else, heads and shoulders above everybody else. And so far, what we've talked about is you're doing the work, man. You're listening with intention, and you're listening, and you're going about your business. And these happy accidents, these beautiful, wonderful stories that are happening around you, all of us can learn from. I mean, this is the impact of what good customer service is about, good sales is about. It's all about that human connection at the heart level, at the center of it all. Your brother wanted to get better. These teams that he's working with, the football teams, they want that elusive competitive edge that no one else has. And I think that's what real humans want out of life if they're engaging anywhere in this world, whether it's family, a better relationship with your kids or your spouse, getting a bigger paycheck. It isn't about the money, it's about the connection and the passion to do your job, and learning from the very best people you can. Do you find that to be true?
Yeah, I do. And look, I mean, I appreciate that share, and I do think it's true. And I also feel very fortunate to be able to tell stories for a living. But I think part of the reason I tell stories is because they're tools for connection. People can see themselves in the story. Most of the stories I tell, if you watch me speak, they're not about me. And so because I'm a professional storyteller, I pay close attention to my life experience. And life is content.
Yeah.
So I may end up telling a story about a barista I may met at the airport, or I may tell a story about something that an inspirational CEO did in the middle of a crisis to course correct an outcome. And so I'm constantly writing, reading, researching, learning, and sort of working in my craft of creating content and studying and being a student of both business and life.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think the cool part about the job is, to your point, is like I'm learning through all of this. I get a front row seat to all of these insights and wisdom and gifts and human experiences. And it's a piece of advice I'd give to anybody is don't focus on trying to be interesting. Get interested in other people. And that's really good leadership advice. It's really good sales advice. And I think it's good life advice. Put other people at the center of everything you do. And that's what human-centered leaders do.
Wow. I like that. Uh, Whenever I tell a story about myself, it's usually because I screwed up. That's my favorite.
I have plenty of those too. Trust me.
I I start out with I broke my ankle on the football field in high school during band camp.
Nah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
But you're right. When you, I learned this by accident. You're talking about this, but live life with intention that you're seeing these wonderful stories and events unfold that you can tell. And I started carrying around a notebook everywhere I go, just because, that one interaction with the cashier at your local supermarket, you see somebody help a homeless person. Those are stories about other people, which are incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think it's important to mention in the context of business, I mean, it's, you know, in some respects, this idea of human connection and storytelling and leading with the heart, it can sound soft, but it isn't. It's actually what helps people align in pursuit of a shared vision or execute effectively on a strategy. And there's a statistics that's cited in management consulting. 70% of organizational change efforts fail. And I'd say that's right based on my experience. And the reason isn't the strategy. We have enough intelligence and smart people and consultants and MBAs that can architect or formulate a 3 to 5 year plan or a strategy. It's the execution and alignment and the people, and so the people that's the most complex part of the business. And so, getting some of this right, I think, especially today, it's more important than it's ever been.
You had a statistic on one of your videos that blew my mind, and it said basically heart-centered leadership or leaders who put their people first did 211% better on I think it was the S&P 500. And I was just like, if that doesn't inspire you to just be better as a leader and come from that heart-centered human kind of area, that statistic alone should inspire you.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of how we built the website with that narrative. And so you can scroll down and get the definition of what human-centered means and get the data to support why it's better. They outperform the S&P, they outperform in terms of revenue, and they get ideas to the market 2 times faster. And when you look at the long tail well-being crisis we're in right now, where people are overwhelmed and burned out and they feel like they don't belong and they're disengaged, this really is the antidote to that. It's not easy, and it takes an incredible amount of self-awareness, introspection, humility, and hard work, but it is a better way to lead teams and to approach the marketplace with products and services. And it's the way that actually drives results.
I want to show some of the work that Ryan is doing, where he goes into an organization and he really helps them realign and get into this, human-centered way of managing people. And so I'd like to show you some of what he does, and we're going to show this right now.
I had the just beautiful good fortune, privilege of spending a big part of a day inside your restaurant in Bloomington, Minnesota, and Don and Steve were excellent hosts. And, I wanted to come in and really kind of understand the experience, the operation. Yeah, I wanted a free Butterburger too, but that's beside. And I got one. And the custard and the cheese curds. I didn't have to eat for 2 weeks after that. Look at that table. It was beautiful. And what was interesting to me about the conversation, we were having a business conversation, context, talking about culture, your approach to the guest experience, your relationships with team members. And in the midst of our conversation, a defining moment revealed itself. And you couldn't have scripted this, but I want to walk you into the experience that I had having lunch in your restaurant that day and introduce you to a very, very special Culver's guest. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Helen Cruz.
Why wouldn't Donnie just open Don Fong's? Well, I'm going to go with a powerful team right here, that I have a lot of support, that I have a system. I have the corporate, who I mentioned before, who I can confidently work each day knowing that they're behind my back if something goes wrong.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Miss Helen. Happy birthday.
See the faces? You see the faces? 96.
Thank you.
And that's Culver's. A little bit goes a long way, doesn't it? That's Culver's. A little bit goes a long way.
Bravo. Bravo. That's Culver's to me. And this is Helen Cruz. Now, when we saw this unfolding in front of our eyes, I just thought, of course, she's 96, she's celebrating her birthday. I'm just going to walk by her table and on the way out, wish her a happy birthday. I said, hey, happy birthday, Helen. She looked up and said, sit down, young man. And so when a 96-year-old on her birthday asks you to sit down, you sit down. Sit down. And we got into a conversation. She told me about her life. She was very proud of the fact that she was a veteran, World War II veteran. And that photograph that I'm holding in my hand is a picture of her in uniform. She pulled that out of her purse and wanted to make sure I saw that and understood what patriotism means, because my generation's forgetting that. And, we got into this conversation. And her daughter was sitting across from her, and she was telling me about her life and how she met a great love in the war and lost him, and it was a beautiful story. And I said, Helen, you're here on your 96th birthday. Why did you come to Culver? She said, I love it here. And the way she said it, from my perspective, had less to do with the food and a whole lot more to do with the people and the experience and the relationships. It's a defining, yeah, go ahead, yeah. It's beautiful when you witness someone celebrating a defining moment in their life, and it's so beautifully captured. And that's what happened in that restaurant that day. And there's an art to that, a humility to that, an express focus and appreciation to that. And that was probably one of the biggest lessons I learned as a consultant and an expert and an author, spending time with you in Bloomington, Minnesota. And for just, I think, one of the most beautiful and brilliant insights, and I certainly intend to share this with others, around capturing a defining moment. Have a look.
Almost every day I come to work, someone says, you have a great team. Where do you get them? People say, well, Don, yes, you hire them. No, but that takes more than that. Yeah. I love to be able to say, Don Fong, or the owner, could be at the door every day. That can't be possible. But they can be extensions of my arm. Yes. And I don't want them to be all Don Fong. I want them to be the Gabbies or the Misties or the Calebs, or whom it may be. And use the same passion that I have in your own way. And then people will like that.
Genuine, caring in action. That's what makes it happen. You do that consistently, but being genuine is the key. Yeah. Because people can tell. They can. If you're faking it or you're doing it because the boss told you have to do it, they can tell. But in Culver's, we strive to get more than that. And that's about building a culture within the business. And when you have that culture in place, as Don has done so well with building here, you can feel it when you walk into a restaurant when they have it right. So that consistency builds frequency, and frequency builds loyalty. So I talked to a guy named Mike today. He comes here 3 times a day.
We're talking about
Mike.
Yeah,
Okay?
that's amazing.
Mike. You're awesome.
Yeah.
Love you, man. Every interaction is an opportunity to make a difference with somebody, right? In some way. And you may never meet the person again, but if they can leave with a memory, that's a good thing, right?
Well done. Genuine caring and action delivered consistently. I couldn't have said it any better. I don't say it any better. I think that is the new economy leadership mandate. That is how you influence culture. And when everybody's coming from that place and that perspective, it does give you an opportunity to turn a transaction into a defining moment, create a memory that lasts inside someone's heart and mind for the rest of their life.
How happy was Culver's with your result?
Yeah, it's very happy, and it's a pretty cool story. So look, I practice what I preach. I'm not perfect by any stretch, but these principles around being human-centered and putting the customer at the center of everything you do, they're important, and it's the way I try and approach my relationships. And so when we have an engagement, when I'm doing a program, one of the things I like to do is do a lot of discovery and due diligence. We customize all our work product and programming for each particular client. And so the engagement that you referenced with Culver's, we actually went in and we spent a day in one of their restaurants, and we brought our video crew in, and we were interviewing team members and managers about what makes Culver's unique. And the most beautiful thing happened in the middle of this work session was that there was a woman in the restaurant celebrating her 95th birthday. And we didn't know, it wasn't staged. We didn't know she was going to be there. And when the people in the restaurant found this out, they started singing happy birthday to her in unison. And so we're in the corner talking to the general manager, doing a focus group. And all of a sudden our camera pans over and we're catching this happen real time in the restaurant. This woman is at Culver's celebrating her 95th birthday, right? And so that happens, and it's this beautiful moment, and we capture it all on video. Well, then I got to go sit down with her at her table. I walked over and I said, "Hey, I just wanted to wish you happy birthday." She looked up at me and she said, "Sit down, young man." And I sat down, and she told me this beautiful story about her life, and she was there with her daughter on her birthday, and she was a veteran. She had been in the war. She pulled out a picture and showed me, she wanted to show me this young generation, hey, there's me in my uniform, and I'm a patriot and a veteran. Yeah. And she met her husband during that time, and he had passed eventually. And so, I got to ask her, why did you come to Culver's on your 95th birthday? And when you think about a customer experience and why she chose that restaurant and why it mattered to her and the experience she was having with her daughter, as somebody who was, look, let's face it, she's in the, and she, acknowledged that she's in the, final stages of her life. For me to be able to assimilate that and talk about what makes Culver's different and why that was embedded into her and her family, and it was part of their tradition, those are teachable moments, and those are winnable moments. And that's the way I approach the work. And look, we got lucky. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. But you made a point earlier. It's like, you have to be doing the work. Like you have to work with your clients that way. Then something great happens. You have to go back and talk to the barista. Then something great happens. Instead of just encouraging your brother on the phone, you take a weekend and you sit down and you go to work to really honor him. And then something great happens. And it's if you pour all of yourself into these moments, things have a way of unfolding. And if you're attentive and aware enough, it leads to great outcomes. And I'm very fortunate that we've had clients that have trusted us to come in and do this work.
Ladies and gentlemen, go to ryanestis.com. He's a powerhouse out there, great keynote speaker, and obviously has a great, great heart. Thank you as always for being on Awakened Nation, my friend. The reason I love having you on is you come from the heart. I mean, you live this stuff, and they've discovered over the last couple of years that it's the soft skills that help people rise to the top in any organization. And it's kind of funny. I'm that generation that was raised with command and control. You hire and you fire, you hire and you fire, and you don't care about people. And I just have to say, it's an honor to see you doing the work that you're doing because I know you say you're not famous and all this, but the impact you have had personally on corporations, not only here in America, but around the world, I think is a testament to this new wave of what we're doing, this fourth industrial revolution. And you are on the front edge of teaching people a better way of managing and running a business. So I have to thank you for that, my friend.
Well, those are kind words, and I appreciate it. I think it's an extraordinary time to be alive, and things are changing so fast.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of technology. We've got it baked into the new website. We're using generative AI, and we've got Ryan Estis GTP, but those are tools, and the
Right.
tools can accelerate a business and afford opportunities, and we'll leverage all of them. But there are certain aspects, I think, of how we relate and how we align in pursuit of what matters that are still germane and unique to us. And I love it. Microsoft CEO, who probably is leading the artificial intelligence revolution and productivity, and he's an extraordinary leader, a very human-centered leader. He came out and said it. He said, emotional intelligence trumps EQ, trumps IQ.
Yeah.
And that empathy isn't a soft skill. It's one of the hardest things that we actually learn how to do, is to relate and see life through somebody else's experience and perspective. And I think he's spot on, and that's very consistent with my thesis too.
Wow. It is an amazing time to be alive. And you are right. Every time I run into a dysfunctional situation, it's always because the person has a very low emotional quotient, EQ. They're reacting and deflecting. And so, very powerful work in this day and age because nobody should be projecting their traumas anymore in a work environment.
Well,
And
I did. So, and you want to be transparent for a minute. I was a very good salesperson, and and in the time I did it, it wasn't super collaborative. It was the early part of my career, and I was able to kind of go out and acquire customers, and I really mastered that skill, and I was good at it, and kind of a lone wolf, a hunter, and I had a lot of bravado, and probably it was false confidence, probably masked my insecurity, but I had a big ego. It was about me, and I wanted recognition and validation and opportunity. And so, like a lot of large organizations, they take their best salespeople and do what? Well, we're going to promote him into management,
yep.
right? We're gonna make this guy a regional manager, and then he can take 8 other people and turn them into him, and the company will grow because of it. And they're two completely different jobs. And
Yeah.
so it was only through my epic failure as a new manager that I had to make a commitment to try to begin to understand what was necessary to lead other people. But honestly, it wasn't until later in my life that I recognized one of my core principles today, that leadership is an inside out job. And the best leaders start with themselves. And this idea of connection to others, it starts with self-awareness. And I always tell a leader, if you could be growing your humility and self-confidence at the same time, if those two things could be rising. But for a long time, I had something to prove, and it was about me and my recognition and my opportunity. That's not leadership. Leadership is about what you have to give, and it isn't
Yeah.
about you. And but to arrive at that place where, use your words, we're not projecting our trauma on other people. You have to look inside yourself and be self-aware enough to move beyond those things. And that's why I said it's hard work, because it is. And but that's how we become extraordinary leaders.
Wow. Thank you, Ryan. Do you want to say a little bit about Impact 11? I was looking on your website. You're the founding partner of
Yeah.
Impact 11, and you guys are into a hyper growth enterprise that embodies the human centered movement, delivering a 500% increase in growth and a 1,300% increase in shareholder value with a 90% client retention rate over the last 2 years. That is really impressive and a testament to the fact, and this is why I love you on the show. I like real business people who are actually doing things in the trenches rather than sitting, somewhere, writing books. You're actually in the trenches doing this. So let's talk about
Yeah.
Impact 11, my friend.
Yeah, well, I'm really proud of Impact 11, and it's an extraordinary community of thought leaders, and we're into phase 2 now, which I'll touch on. So Impact 11 at its genesis is a thought leader community, and it's an expert accelerator. So if you're in the business of sharing ideas and particularly speaking for a living, Impact 11 supports the full spectrum of running that kind of business or practice. So everything from creative content to monetizing it, to organizing your body of work, to storytelling, to stagecraft, to sales and distribution, to brand and marketing. It's sort of the full spectrum. And we've got some extraordinary members and a lot of support. And to your point, the organization is growing. And I'm super excited about it because we just launched phase 2, which I mentioned, which is the Impact 11 corporate offering. So we're moving right into, from a leadership development perspective, into an offer around executive presence and presentation skills. And so we're taking all of the IP methodology, constructs, facilitation, tools, techniques, tactics that we use for thought leaders, and we've evolved them to fit for the purpose of executives and executive teams. And so we're doing ticketed events where, you can bring your top 4 executives, or you can come. Our next one is in June in Detroit, or we'll actually come into your organization and do this sort of facilitated learning for large leadership teams. And I just think, we've been talking about human-centered leadership, right? And like the foundation of this is effective communication. It's executive presence, it's presentation skills. And that could be a presentation in front of 1,000 people at a conference, or a presentation in front of 3 people in conference room B. But I think it's such a critical leadership skill, but it's not developed properly. And so we see that void in the market, and we're going to fill it. And I'm excited about that.
Ladies and gentlemen, reach out to Ryan, ryanestis.com, and you'll find everything there on his website. Honored, my friend, to have you on the show today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I'm not going to let you go that easy. As you know, I have my lightning round at the end where we get to know you a little better.
I knew that was coming.
You're prepped and ready, baby. My first question is, I want to know if you have a really great memory with you and your brother, Chad. With all the work you've been doing and the fighting, and hey, we should make a book out of this. What is your favorite memory with your brother?
Man, there's a few. We're close, we're best friends. I'll give you a quick one. Maybe it's not quick, but it's an important one. It's one of the most meaningful ones. We talk about this in the book, but a few years ago, I was burning the candle at both ends, and just and at the end of the year, I got sick. I had and was diagnosed. I had a tumor in my left bicep. And that in the MRI, my doctor, the radiologist, they thought it looked like cancer, and cancer runs in my family. And they couldn't biopsy it because of where the tumor was in my left bicep. And they said, we're going to do surgery. And, when we have surgery, we'll know what it is. And then we can get a course of treatment. Well, I went to a pretty dark place, and I was probably not too far from a dark place already. And that kind of pushed me over the edge, and, worst case scenario. And so, I thought, oh my God, I have cancer, and look what I've done to myself, and I can't believe this is happening. And I canceled some speaking engagements. Well, I called my brother. He was the first person I called, and I said, "This is bad news." And oh my God, I'm going down. And he was great. He got on the next flight out, came up, and he stayed with me. And one of the most powerful things that he did was when he showed up at my place, came in, and I was emotional and a little distraught. He owned the problem with me. So in other words, from the minute he got there, it was, when is our doctor appointment? How, when do we know for sure? Have we scheduled? He never said you. It was us. I think when we're suffering or struggling, one of the things we want the most is someone to just be down there in it with us. And I went from feeling completely alone to being part of a team. And we had a vision and we had a path forward and we were going to beat this thing. And he even said, and when we beat it, he gave me this little speech. We're going to go buy these watches because there's nothing more important than time. And our time here is not done. And, I didn't have cancer, which is kind of the story in the book. I woke up from surgery. I didn't have cancer. I called my brother. I said, "Hey, man, we're getting watches." He said, but we didn't beat cancer. But we still got the watches. We should have got the watches. And I flew down and we had this beautiful ceremony and we gave each other toasts and we wear these watches. And it's just a beautiful blessing and a reminder both of his presence in my life and the things that mattered. So I'll never forget that, though. And it's just a testament, that's a real example of human-centered leadership, right?
That is an amazing, touching story because, I have friends who complain about their brothers, and you have a team leader who came in.
He showed up.
He showed up.
As he consistently does.
And, I thought you were hot stuff. It sounds like your brother's, a twin flame, my friend. That is awesome that he helped you with that. So shout out to Chad if you're listening. Thank you. My second question is from universities all the way down to the top corporations in the world, from the C-level down to people managers and employees on the front line. What do you think is the big lie that corporations and business leaders keep telling everybody that really shouldn't be taught anymore?
Man, there's we could do a whole nother podcast. I have just such strong opinions on this. I think we're teaching so many of the wrong things. You know what? Like I can teach technical competency. I can teach product and solution orientation. I can teach the discipline of human resources. And even a few years ago, remember we were telling kids, go into computer programming, learn how to write code, go into computer science. What are you talking about? That's all gonna that's where artificial intelligence is. But what don't we teach? What are the things we don't teach? How to know someone deeply, how to hold space for someone when they're we don't teach the things. We don't teach it energy and some of these things that matter the most. And I just wish there was more emphasis. And I'll tell you, man, the whole thing, my idea of success was climb the corporate ladder, keep your head down, work hard, do what you're told, and your life's going to get work out. And that was such a myth. And it just isn't true. And you have to realize I wish we help people see like my boss did. I wish everybody could be with a teacher like that, because you realize that there's so much opportunity and possibility in the world, but you have to be willing to bet on yourself and take intelligent risks and experiment and experience setbacks. And that's so often where we learn and grow. And I just think if we could teach people how to view their opportunity in their life in that expansive way, while grounding in the skills and the things that matter the most, I think those are the kind of people I want to hire for Impact 11 in my business. So I don't know that we do a great job of that in university today.
Wow. I agree with you. I have a list as well. And thank you for that feedback. My third and final question is, in 10 or 20 years, what's your greatest hope for humanity?
I hope humanity becomes more human and that we begin to recognize that we're all really the same. You know, the differences between us are nuanced, but we create separation and division, and we magnify these things. And you know, at the essence, in our core, in our, you know, in our light being, we're all the same. And you know, we're conditioned to be different. We're conditioned to believe certain things, but that we didn't come into this with that conditioning. That was planted. It was like, you know, it's like programming the software. But the essence of who we are, what we came into this experience with, it's we're all the same. And you know, this conflict and division and this less than and the war and it's all from fear. It's from fear and protectionism and separation. And my wish would be that we sort of tear down those structures and I think begin to recognize that there's more happening here at a whole different level. And by the way, we're in here and inhabiting this and sharing this experience for just a microsecond. And in a decade after we're gone, or 2 decades after we're gone, nobody's going to remember any of this or your beliefs or who you voted for, or all these crazy things that we identify and relate to. And so there's I hope in 10 years we can reconnect to our humanity and share this experience here in a little bit differently than we are now. And by the way, that's why I'm writing about how to be human-centered now.
The future of growth is human. Here with Ryan Estis here on Awakened Nation. Thank you, my friend, again for being on the show. Thank you.
Yeah, it's absolutely a pleasure. I love our conversations. I'll come back anytime. This went by fast.
I know. I can't believe it's been an hour. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, tune in next week, and we're going to have another extraordinary guest here on Awakened Nation. Until then, bye-bye.
Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success will be because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.